Oh, hey, I'm glad you're here. Welcome to season 19 of VHS. We have a lot planned for this season, from our classic format, kicking it off, where each episode is about a film and the guest has the profession or experience portrayed in the film. We'll then have our virtual video store returning. We'll talk about genres ranging from animated shorts to action to exploitation to kinder drama, and we might even talk with a legendary director. It's a season full of familiar faces and fantastic new guests as well. If you enjoy this episode and want to know more about professional dancers, then check out Season 3, Episodes 5 and 6, where we spoke with Jenna McAllister on dancing at the Blue Iguana. Lastly, I want to thank Frank at Terminal Zone for the introduction to this episode's guest. Be sure to head over to Terminal Zone on Etsy and see all of Frank's radness. So let's just get right into the episode. The film is Stripped to Kill, the guest is a burlesque dancer, and this is VH Greetings and salutations. This is VHS, and I'm your host, Dirk Marshall. Our guest for this episode is a performer, a movement instructor, a coach, and a producer of Burly It's Natasha Riot. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Now, we will get to some of the other things that you are involved in, but as I have mentioned, Burly if you wouldn't mind just telling people what that is.
Yeah, it's a monthly show that runs the Coffin. And actually, I say monthly, but starting this year, we are doing a season. So it's January through October.
Oh.
And it's a variety burlesque show that is more, it has a darker theme. So because we're at the Coffin, it makes sense. So it's more goth, more metal, more subversive. I encourage the performers to bring acts that they might not be able to do at other shows, just because maybe they're too weird or too dark. And so Burly is the place for those. And yeah, we're in our 13th year, which I feel is very appropriate.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's awesome. And so the reason I decided to do a season is because starting last year, I created a festival called the Umbre Noctis Festival, which happens in November. And so having Berlinomicon and the festival
A bit much.
was a little too much. And then I also need a break in December. So I was like, oh, you know what? We'll just do a season, like a real theater company.
I love that. What is the difference between the two events?
So whereas Berlinomicon is monthly, I have 5 performers in that. The festival has 2 days of performance with performers from all around the world. And last year we had 13 performers that applied each night. And I have a team of 4 other producers. So we had 2 producers each night, and then we had 2 out-of-town headliners.
Oh, wow.
Perform. So it's a much bigger production. It's a longer show. And last year we had a pre-event at the Weird War Gallery with our headliner, Legend. And then following the performance days on Sunday, we had a dark market at the Coffin. So it was like a 4-day long extravaganza.
It's so interesting that you mention all this because I didn't know that happened that you were just talking about. But I'm
Yeah.
friends with Weird War and we know mutual people. So I was like, how did I miss out on this? I love the dark market stuff, but like there's so many cool things that are happening in Portland almost all the time. And it's performers like yourself that are producing things and compiling talent for these evenings. I just love living in a place that there's that many people performing.
Yeah, I like to say at every Berlinomicon, whether or not it's true, it's my opinion that Portland is the best burlesque town.
Mm.
And I like to say in the entire world, just because we have so many performers and so many shows
Yeah.
and such a diverse array of not just burlesque, but drag and
Hmm.
belly dance and theater and art in general. It's you can see a show every night of the week. It's really incredible.
Yeah, I
So
love it. Is looking broader because I know that you've also performed in San Francisco and other places, but like when you're a performer and a producer like yourself, are there other people on the horizon if you're pulling talent from other cities, or is it social media, or how are you finding these other people?
yeah, social media also, I myself, I was touring a lot more pre-pandemic,
Hmm.
but I feel like at least last year people were starting to tour again. So people will come into Portland, and I guess that ties into social media. People have reached out to me saying,
Gotcha.
"Hey, I'm going to be in Portland.
Hmm.
Can you put me in a show, or do you know people? Do you know other shows?" Yeah, so when I was touring, going to different festivals in different cities, I would meet performers and be like, hey, anytime you're in Portland, let me know, and then vice versa. So right now, really, social media is kind of how we all connect
Yeah.
in the performing world if we're not in close proximity to each other.
I just wanted to note that because sometimes individual performers you can kind of feel isolated, and it helps people to know the channels in which you can find like-minded individuals.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the film that brings us together is Strip to Kill from 1987. What's your history with Strip to Kill?
The first time I saw it, I don't even remember how I came across it, but I was like, oh, yeah, this is something that's right up my alley. I love researching strip club culture pre 1990.
Hmm.
There's always been a crossover with strip clubs and burlesque,
Hmm.
and whether or not that is like something that people want to acknowledge, it's very, very true. And once I learned more about this film, I mean, that's basically how this film was written. If I'm not mistaken, the writer and director
Hmm.
went to the body shop in LA
Yep.
and it was her first strip club experience
Yeah.
and then fell in love with the girls. The body shop used to be much more of a like burlesque style club.
Mm.
And the famous burlesque dancer, I'm just going to call her Kitten because I can't pronounce her last name. She was a big burlesque star and she was in a lot of movies. And I think she had retired from the body shop before Strip to Kill, but
Mm.
that was back in the day when the body shop had more burlesque performers. So even into the 80s, they were still doing acts. And so the director saw this, fell in love with the girls, went back often, and kind of wrote this movie. And actually, if I'm not mistaken, which I might be, I think she cast some of the dancers from the Body
You're
Shop in
correct.
Strip to Kill.
Yeah.
So like the people that are in the movie, I was like, oh, so if I was going to the Body Shop in 1987, I would have seen this act. This is so cool, you know.
Yeah.
And the acts were really elaborate and incredible. And
I love that. I saw it in our video store. I had a video store I grew up in when I was a kid, and obviously I'm going to be attracted as a teenager to a movie like this with the cover and everything. I'm like, oh my gosh, I definitely shouldn't be watching this. And then I watched it, and we'll get on all the different reasons why I think this movie is so great, but it really is very different. And because I think Kat's directing it, it's a lady doing it, so she's aware of like the male gaze, but the film itself doesn't feel as lascivious and exploitive as it's labeled. Obviously, it is a sexploitation film, but I just feel like it's funny to say, but Strip to Kill is so tasteful in certain areas that
oh, totally.
it's that reverence that she has for the people themselves. And that's why, like, I
Yes.
love to do these episodes. This will be talking about a film that involves stripping, but you also are an expert on burlesque. So knowing the difference between those two worlds is very interesting because burlesque has a sort of a more artistic outsider view, whereas stripping, I feel like, maybe not in Portland, but like in other places. If you strip, it's like the scene is this thing, there's a stigma attached to it for so long until, like Kat, you meet people who work in the profession and suddenly it opens up. Oh, people, and they're layered and nuanced and multi-talented and multifaceted and have interests. And like, I've done a couple different episodes with people and I didn't think they were one note before, but once you actually talk to any person, you're just like, oh my gosh, like there's so much going on. And you have this athleticism that you can do, like these, I mean, I don't know,
Yeah.
it's pretty crazy. So this movie stands. I was very excited when you suggested, like, what about this film? I was like, oh my gosh, yes. It's an erotic thriller exploitation film from Concord Pictures, which was helmed by Roger Corman back in the day, directed by Kat Shea, who was an actor and director. She also did the sequel to this film, Dance the Damned, Poison Ivy, Carrie to the Rage, and the Nancy Drew Hidden Staircase movie. So
What a-
some
what an
variety.
interesting trajectory.
Yeah, yeah. It's pretty amazing. The cinematographer is John LeBlanc, which really helps this film look so incredible. He did Prince's Kiss video before this, and then he's in the camera department for Kingdom of Spiders, Blues Brothers, Cocoon, and The Parent Trap. Our editor is Zach Strainberg, who edited The Matrix, was award winning, and Brian Stubblefield, who actually went into sound for movies like Speed and After Earth. It stars Kay Lenz. She was Sandy in House, Death Wish 4, a lot of television, and Greg Evigan, who was in Deep Star 6, which I love, and 60 episodes of My Two Dads, which I think I watched all of back in the day.
Amazing.
Um, yeah. And then Norman Fell. He was in Bullet, The Graduate, and The Boneyard, which is really fantastic. The infamous story that you've alluded to is the director lost a bet with her husband about shellfish being poisonous at certain times of the year.
That's
And so she tells it in
right.
the commentary and stuff. It's very funny. And so she stood outside the body shop, not wanting to go in, being nervous. And then she went in and was just wowed by the performances. I can definitely identify with that because I was like, I'm not a strip club person. This was back in like Eugene, but I went with women and the connection the women had with the performers. I was like, oh, I'm like in this clique. So I sat surrounded by my female friends and we had a great time. So I understood when she was talking about being like thinking something, this environment is one, and then being sort of wowed by the performances and the people. And then spending time and doing the research, she just really was taken by these people and was like, if we're going to make this movie, we have to cast the performers. And so she gave them acting classes. And when you watch this movie, it's not like I watch a lot of films with like amateurist sort of performances, and you just take that as the realism of the situation. I don't get that from this film. I think the performers are all great.
Yeah, yeah. I had listened to that interview and then rewatched Strip to Kill, and I was like, I'm fooled.
Yes.
If I didn't know better, I would just think they were just actresses, like I
Hmm.
did the first time I saw it. Wow, that's a testament to the performer,
Yes,
really.
so true. The bulk of the cast were all performers. Their acts were more often than not lifted for this film. The only difference is they embellish some things, like they give her one actress a motorcycle, which was
Hmm.
not on stage when she did her performance originally. But that's one of the fun things about when I watched this, not knowing anything about it, is you go, well, for finding out they have to do a dance number in like 2 minutes, the stage is really set in an elaborate way, which is
Yeah,
fun. Like, I'm not like poking fun at it, but then you realize, like, oh no, this was their act. Kat had to have choreography done so that obviously the camera's in the right place to get certain shots. But this is what these people were doing when they were discovered by Kat. And I just like, I love the ownership that they have of like, because people have certain moves and things and certain
hmm
shapes they like to throw. And to have that be captured in a film forever for people that, didn't want to be an actor, I just think
yeah,
that's a special thing.
yeah. The athleticism too,
Yeah.
really, like almost every single dancer was just they're mind blowing. And
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and this is one of the first films I believe to capture the pole,
oh, okay.
which is a very iconic thing, especially here in Portland. I think we have one of the tallest poles, or we did at one point. It was in the one that's by the Hippo Plumbing Union Jacks, I
Oh,
believe.
Union Jacks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes.
I don't know if
That's
that's
right.
still true, but we saw someone perform there once, and she had one leg and
Oh,
worked.
yes.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
I
Worked,
think so. Yeah.
yeah, did the whole pole and everything. And like, I was amazed. A person with every limb, I was like, how do you do that? And then you see that and you're just like, anything's possible. I just love
Yeah.
that. Like, just what a town to be growing up in. So let's press play on Strip to Kill. We start with Michelle Foreman, who's dancing on stage to deny the night while credits play. It's an excellent opening sequence. Like, it's just like, here's what this movie is. It's a great song. They were dancing all to famous songs at the time, and they, of course, couldn't use those songs with their budget. So they had to rescore the entire film. And I don't notice the difference. I actually really like the songs that are in the film. Like, I would be sort of pulled out if it was, Faster Pussycat or whatever at the time.
Mhm.
I think these songs are fantastic and very different for each number. I'm sure you encounter that with burlesque performances and things. The choreography and the music and everything all need to kind of be a unified.
Yeah, yes, for sure. I feel like musicality is such a huge part of any performance. It's really what like brings it up another
Hmm.
level, brings it into a more professional sort of array, I guess. It's very important to match the music to whatever you're doing, or vice versa. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I should have mentioned this up front, but would you mind just saying a little bit about the difference between burlesque and, say, stripping?
So that distinction gets really, really blurred in
Right.
Portland.
Hmm.
We definitely live in a bubble here, which is it's awesome. I mean, we have clubs like the Kit Kat Club, which completely blur the lines. They have feature sets every night that basically are burlesque sets.
Okay.
So the performers will bring more costuming, more thematic acts during their feature sets. And I feel like a lot of dancers in other clubs, I mean, I've noticed this in clubs around the country where, everybody has their personality, they have their persona, right?
Hmm.
Which is burlesque. It's, creating a persona to put on a stage is theatricality that is
Yeah.
burlesque. Stripping depending on what region you're in, depends on how much clothing you can take off.
Yeah.
Really, the distinction is maybe the audience and maybe the venue, right? So
Mm.
burlesque you might see more in a bar situation with a stage or a theater situation where stripping it's in a club with a number of other strippers and the clientele might be a little different
Sure.
because I feel like for the most part people know what they're getting into when you say strip club
Hmm.
but don't really know what they're getting into as far as burlesque. Because like a burlesque show can encompass a comedian, a contortionist, a belly dancer, a lot of different
Right.
acts rather than the strip tease of it all.
Hmm.
But at the core, it's kind of the same. You're taking your clothes off.
Yeah.
Whether it's to a story, whether you're changing characters when you're taking your clothes off, or you're just taking your clothes off because that's the venue you're in, it's all stripping.
Yeah.
It comes up in waves in the burlesque community where the debate happens again of where some people are like, well, I'm not a stripper. It's just like, you took your glove off on stage. You stripped a piece of clothing off. Technically, you're a stripper.
Yeah.
Sorry. It's like trying to destigmatize that word.
Yes. Yes. I
And
agree.
and again, it's easy for me to say because I live in Portland and it's really part of our culture
Sure.
to like yeah, stripping is part of our culture in Portland, whereas in other places it's not.
Thank you for that clarification because when you mentioned the stand up and things, that really clicked for me because I saw you perform for the Black Lodge Burlesque, which you
Yes.
were the host.
Hmm.
And I hadn't seen it before, but a friend of ours that we brought had. And we all love, of course, David Lynch, and the performance the entire night was just so fun. And the sandworm was one of my favorite.
Yes.
I don't know who the performer was, but just that the joy I get just from remembering that is so wonderful. But the variety of the acts and the way that they were interpreting, a fish in the percolator or whatever it was just so great because they're showing their reverence for something that's a different, it's like taking another layer of because we know the films that are being referenced or TV and the performers doing a burlesque perform. I don't know. There was just so many moving pieces going on that you're like, I was
Yeah.
impressed with this person's mind, also their, you know, agility and everything, and then the
Yeah.
creativity of the costumes. It just was so magical. And is that something that you do annually?
Oh yeah, Black Lodge is produced by Baby Lestrange, and yeah, we try to do it annually.
Nice.
If not like twice. Like last year we did a one-off earlier in the year, and then we had the big Black Lodge burlesque, I think in December
Mm,
of last year. But yeah, I mean that's another distinction between strip clubs and burlesque shows, that often there's like big themes with burlesque shows. Like Berlinomicon is more gothic, darker leaning.
mm,
Black Lodge is all David Lynch.
mm.
Lacey Knightley Presents has different themes. This weekend, because it's Valentine's Day, they're doing a book lovers burlesque erotic
Oh, cool.
edition, right? So that with the burlesque shows, you can have more of a deep theme, and then all the performers bring something of that theme. And Black Lodge is really unique in that, where it's like everything has to be David Lynch.
Mhm.
You know, either it doesn't have to be just Twin Peaks, it's
Oh yeah, there was
any
some really
David Lynch.
obscure things where we were like, "Oh, that's incredible. That's a deep pull." Like that,
Yeah.
like I mean, yeah, it's fantastic. I highly recommend anybody interested in burlesque or David Lynch and the world where they two combine to go see that. It's a great
Yeah.
show here.
We're doing a night of 1,000 Lauras. I think it's in August this year. So
Yeah,
so because everybody seems to have a Laura Palmer
yeah, we'll
act.
we'll
So
we'll be there for that. We talked about a movie called Gypsy '83 on this podcast, and it inspired my wife and I to go to the Night of 1,000 Stevies in New York.
nice.
Yeah, and it was absolutely fantastic. Back in the film, there's a lava lamp on every table, and I just love that aesthetic. It's
Me
just,
too.
it's so fantastic. We noticed that Roxanne and Ray are watching, and then they talk about payment. It's $30 for topless.
Deal is topless for 30.
And I'm guessing that's like a day. I don't know how that works.
So, okay, so that's very interesting because I noticed that too, and they talked about paychecks. So, which is interesting because up until I want to say maybe it was during the pandemic where the California dancers uh, did petition to be on the books workers.
Hmm.
And so that is now a law in California. So evidently that used to be a law because, I mean, in Portland, the dancers do not get paychecks.
No.
They only survive on tips. And so from what that movie says, unless it was just written
Yeah.
into it in the movie, maybe in the 80s they were getting paid.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, if she did the
yeah.
research and the dancers are actual performers, I'm like, they didn't take issue with it, so that must have been something. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's really
Well, and
fascinating.
also, I know now, and I don't know back then, but in California, where this was,
Yeah.
I'm assuming that, I mean, that's where the body shop is. If the clubs serve alcohol, you can only be topless. But if it's no alcohol, then you can be fully nude. So it seemed like the club in the movie was only topless. They probably served alcohol.
Well, yeah.
And
Yeah, Hanneman's
yeah.
just drinking shots the whole time he's in that
Oh,
club.
that's right.
I mean, it's like it's great. The whole time you're like, this isn't undercover at all. He's just okay.
You just wanted to see your boobs.
Yeah.
We knew that.
Jeez. Norman Fell then says, "Turn off the neon. It's pricey," which I love because in the shot you can see at least 15 lava lamps. So, so this is her entry point into dance performance. But what was
Mhm.
yours?
Oh my. Well, I've been a dancer since I was little.
Hmm.
So, um, I feel like I got into burlesque. Let me think about this. I've been a belly dancer for a very long time, and I was starting to do more variety, kind of fusion variety stuff that I was looking for a different stage for.
Hmm.
And I am also a fire performer. And when I started doing fire, you still could do fire in clubs.
Hmm.
And so I answered an ad on Yahoo Groups. Do you remember Yahoo
Oh,
Groups?
nice.
I answered an ad on Yahoo Groups for a burlesque show in San Francisco. that was looking for variety acts. I was like, well, would you take a belly dance fire performance? And they were like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, well, let me try and like maybe burlesque it up a little bit. So I made like a little feather bra and a feather little belt and that was like my first burlesque act. And then I think shortly after that is when Great White set that club on fire, and
Yeah.
then uh, almost all indoor fire performance was banned.
Mhm.
And then, side note, Portland is kind of the one of the only places, and Dante's is the only place in Portland that can
Yeah.
have indoor fire anymore, but I digress. Then after that, I think again on Yahoo Groups, I found an ad for a group called the Cocktease in San Francisco
Okay.
that was a burlesque cheerleading squad
Whoa.
that was looking for new members. So I was like, all right. And I went and auditioned, and it was super fun. And I got in, and we had cheerleading uniforms, and we had a whole persona, and we just did naughty cheers.
That's
We
rad.
never stripped. It was just this whole thing. My name was Satin Rules.
I love it. Did you get to pick it?
And that was kind of my inroad really to the whole burlesque scene, because we performed all around San Francisco. So I met a lot of people,
Oh, so
and
cool.
then kind of took that, like meeting producers and being like, oh, I also do this. And they're like, cool, I'll book you in this show. And so then just started getting into it and meeting people. And then I started working with the Hubba Hubba Review in San Francisco as their card girl. And then I kind of moved up to like, I would fill in MC at our weekly shows. Like I would co-MC with Jim, and then yeah, and then just kind of just kept going.
That's
So
fantastic. I would have
yeah.
never guessed the cheerleader bit. So that is, I didn't even come across that in my research. So that is
Well,
fantastic.
it's buried. It was fun, but yeah, I never thought. Well, what's funny for me is that when I was in high school and I was like a subversive little bratty punk rock teen, I was like, you know what? Fuck it, I'm gonna try out for a cheerleading
Hmm.
squad,
Well,
knowing full well if I got in it, I would never do it. But not that there's anything wrong with cheerleading, it's fine. But the cheerleading coach was so mean to me and wouldn't
oh,
even let me try out
yeah.
because of the way I looked.
Hmm.
So yeah, that was my experience of cheerleading before I got into the Copties. So
Yeah,
it
but
kind of
then
makes sense.
I love that there's there's a happy ending to it, thanks to Cocktease.
Yes, look at me now, coach.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Back in the film, we see a sculptor who's frustrated. He throws a cigarette in a coffee cup, and this is Pia Kamakahi. I'm sorry about the last name, but he plays Eric in the film. And spoiler alert, Roxanne. I love this performance, and I love listening. There's a commentary on the Blu-ray where Kat talks about how she had a huge crush on him when he's playing Eric, and then she would completely forget when he doesn't have the facial hair. It's a fantastic performance, and
Yeah.
one of the things I really love about this movie is that sometimes people bump up against this now because they're like, well, there's this cross-dressing character in the film that is the villain, but he's not murdering people. He's not killing the people because they strip. He's not killing them because they're lesbians. He's not killing them because he's dressing up as this person. He's had a psychotic break, but the story isn't villainifying. You know what I mean? Where there's some films
Yeah.
where the killer is evil because they're cross-dressing, and that's how we know they're evil. That's not the point of
Right.
this film, and it's one of the
No.
things I really appreciate about what Kat does with the character, because if that was the reason for everything, then we'd watch it and we would be kind of bummed, and it would be kind of marring on the film. But instead, we can watch all of the performances and be like, God, Pia's pretty incredible to play these two completely different characters.
Totally. I mean, and I think if they did vilify him, we wouldn't be talking about this movie.
Exactly.
So beautifully done, because there's no hints
No.
that Eric is Roxanne at all. Like even I
Mm-mm.
had to watch it again because I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Hold on.
No, the first
Oh,
time I saw
wow.
it as a kid, I didn't even get it. I didn't
Yeah.
understand, and then it wasn't until I was older and watched it, and I was like, even then, I knew the ending, and I was watching it just being like, okay, yeah, Roxanne's still in the film. When does Roxanne leave the film? And then I was like, oh my God, it worked again. I don't understand how it did, but
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really great. Eric then spies on his sister with a woman Angel, and then he's worried he's going to lose her. Cut to our next number as Debbie Nasser dances to "Burn You Down, Don't Cross the Line." Actually, "Don't Cross the Line" is the song. She has a leather jacket, a motorcycle, and I love the vibe of this. But then she starts popping and locking, and I was like, "Whoa, what? Okay, it's the '80s. Like that doesn't quite fit." But she is one of the people that is an actual performer that Kat discovered, and this performance is so like there's such a variety to the moves that Debbie does, and I love that Kat keeps talking about how she's this tough lady but has this tiny little baby voice, and I just think that's really endearing. I don't know. I love this number.
Yeah. And I love that character because yeah, she her persona on stage is that yeah, totally tough and
Yes.
takes no shit. And
Mm-mm.
then when you see her backstage, she's like cuddling up to Norman Fell and
Yeah.
has the kitty on her lap. I was like, "Oh, okay."
She actually has a couple really sweet moments in the film too. Like we'll get to
Uh,
those, but yeah, I just think Debbie is a fantastic character in the film, and also the graffiti on the backdrop. You see the initials KSR, and that's the director's initials spray painted on the backdrop, which is a
oh, I didn't know that.
fun little touch. So then, oh, my favorite move. My favorite move in this performance is the backwards ass jiggle that she does, where she's like facing the camera and then she starts scuttling her legs backwards. And I'm guessing it's to make her cheeks shake. I don't know the point of it, but it's
Uh,
this funny shimmy move that is really an incredible moment.
yeah.
I don't know where that originated, but it's definitely something that's from her performance where they were like, that's going in for sure.
Yeah, totally.
So then backstage, Derek, the DJ, asked Brandy to go out with him to Dire Straits, which I love that detail.
Brandy, I have tickets for Dire Straits. I'm busy.
Get out of my way. Derek, I'm available.
You are not. I'm not going out with you.
I'll go.
This is something I have heard from multiple people in clubs where they're just like, the DJ is really bugging me. So we have friends in my 20s. We had this ongoing thing about the DJs in the strip clubs. Uh, Questionable dudes. Then Killer the Snake peed on a bra. That's a funny little detail in the film. So the backstage life is what I wanted to talk about too. So
Okay.
in your shows and things that you've put on, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of energy, and I'm imagining in burlesque you have a lot of costumes and things. So is it chaos back there, or are people like? Is there a community assisting each other? What's the general vibe?
Yes.
All
The
of
answer is yes.
it.
But and it depends. Some venues you have the tiniest backstage, and
Yeah,
so everyone has to be extremely aware of everyone and for you as an individual to not take up too much space and then to definitely not touch other people's stuff. And
yeah,
it's, you find sometimes where when people haven't come from a theater or a other sort of dance background where that hasn't been communicated to them. I don't think I've ever encountered anyone that it was malicious. I think
hmm,
it's like if somebody moves somebody else's stuff, it's because they just haven't had it drilled into them when they're young that you absolutely never touch anybody else's props.
yeah, yeah,
I feel like for the most part, at least the shows that I'm involved in, people are really respectful of everybody's things and space and energy because that's another point. It's just like if you're having a bad day, you just got to really kind of keep it to yourself
yeah, yeah,
because
yeah,
you're going to affect the other people around you. It's just a real respectful thing. Yeah, and in the movie, their dressing room seems very tiny, and
yeah,
there's a lot of costumes in there, and sometimes you find that. But when I was working at Kit Kat doing the burlesque stuff, we were all, for the most part, really helpful. Like if we had only two songs to get into our elaborate costume, we would help each other. Of
hmm,
course, we want each other to succeed. And I find that in burlesque shows for sure. Like people will help with hair or makeup or, zipping someone up or,
yeah,
you know, I, when I I hosted the Oregon Burlesque Festival a couple of years ago where I was like, I'm gonna wear 3 different dresses. And so I like run backstage
Yeah.
and like try and get some elaborate dress on and put another elaborate dress on. And I had like 2 people helping me. It
Hmm.
was just like I couldn't do it without my fellow performers. So
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
that's important, and especially just once again, do not touch other people's props.
Don't just in general, just don't.
Back in the film, Roxanne is missing, so they call and she says,
Roxanne?
Yeah.
Are you sick or something?
Oh, I'm okay. I'm fine.
Well, did he hurt you?
No,
Then get your ass in here.
I can't.
Fine, I'm coming over there.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am.
Please just meet me at the bridge.
Okay.
You know the park?
Yes, I know which park. I love you.
there's a man named Pocket, and he says she's special, and then he leaves. So the angel goes to meet Roxanne, and someone tosses her over the walking path. She gets covered in gas. Meanwhile, the cops have a sting in the park posing as buskers at night, which is a funny little, like, why would you be, you're not going to make any money playing acoustic guitar in a park at night.
Nothing's going down here.
Why don't you toast us a couple marshmallows?
Come on, enough is enough. I'm getting cold.
Hey, what about me?
I'm coming in.
My legs are getting cramped sitting in this nice warm police car.
Shit, got a little one. Hey!
Help me. I need backup. I need it now.
All right, I'm on my way. Hold on.
Somebody grabs the cash and runs. So our undercover officer, played by Kay Lenz, as Cody, she finds this girl, but there's gas on her. She gets gas on herself, and then the girl goes up in fire. It's really crazy. And then the cops arrive. Nowadays, this would all be computer generated, but this is a crazy fire stunt to be done. Like, and they're rushing. They talk about it in the commentary, but it's very, very intense. The deaths in this movie do not shy away. It's an interesting aspect of this thing. The whole thing really goes hard for a person who was in her 20s when she directed it, which just blows me away. Speaking of fire, you perform with fire.
I do.
As you've mentioned, you can only really do that outside unless you're probably at Dante's, which is a club here for anyone that doesn't live in Portland, where I've seen so many bands perform, but also there's shows that happen with burlesque performers. Working with fire, are you hyper aware of what you're doing on stage, and if somebody looks weird, like they're gonna get too close or something, like how does that affect? Because on your Instagram I saw recently a performance, a fire performance, where you're slowly setting down something that's on fire until you have this kind of like half circle of flames, and it's really beautiful to see the artistry of a performance like that. But I can't imagine that you got to have other things going on in your head, right?
Always. If people knew the internal dialogue
Yeah.
of anything I do on stage, I'd be like, "Oh, really?"
Yeah. How do you enjoy that?
Yeah. So one of the rules, one of the ways we're allowed to do fire inside at Dante's is that people cannot be within 6 feet
Got it.
of the stage. So in that way, I don't have to worry about anyone rushing the stage because there are 2 security on either side of the stage watching for people
Great.
trying to come up to the stage. So what I had on stage are my tall collapsible fans, which are like half my size.
Yeah.
They're giant. And so when I pick those up and have them over my head, I have to make sure, is a flame reaching the ceiling? Am I gonna, behind me, am I hitting the curtain? So I'm always hyper aware of where I am in space whenever I'm on fire, basically. I do have a tool that is a back piece. And so it's like a spine that lights on fire. So that one I can't see.
Right.
So that one I have to rely on my fire safety to make sure that like my hair doesn't catch on fire, that any part of my clothing isn't. So I'll like dance and then glance at them every so often, and they know to like if something's happening, if I see them running towards me, to take it off.
Yeah.
Or they'll just give me a thumbs up because it does get hot, and then your brain sends signal
Yeah,
to
of course.
to the rest of
fire.
your body to freak out because fire's hot. And so it's just like overcoming that and knowing you're safe because you've practiced.
Yeah.
You built these tools in a way to where it's going to be safe.
hmm
Yeah, it does make you very hyper aware of your surroundings. And
Wow. It's just
yeah.
because you're doing other things. You're not just standing there on fire, is the reason I
Yeah.
wanted to mention it. It's like, it's a part of a whole, like, if I have a sparkler on the 4th of July, I'm like, got it. Like, and you're doing an entire performance. So I don't know if people ever thought about all of the thought that goes into place, all the moving
Yeah.
pieces.
And I mean, fire eating and fire breathing too, like
Right.
that was the hardest thing for me to learn because you get fire close to your face and you're like, no,
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely not.
Should
So
not be happening.
it's a real mind body connection sort of thing of like, this is fine. I am controlling this. But also, fire is an element.
Mhm.
Like, you're never really fully going to control it.
No.
So you have to just make peace with it
Yeah.
and know how it's going to react in certain situations and know that sometimes it's, I've been burned before, not super severely, but in ways that I was like, right, okay, I'm not completely in charge of this element,
Right.
but I know how to keep other people safe.
Yeah. I mean, that's all you can do. The next number we see Killer the Snake is on a tree. The dancer has a knife. There's a flaming goblet, so more fire. This was Athena's real act. The tree, I guess, was added, but like the rest of the props and things were all something that she performed, including the suicide at the end of the number, which I've never seen a strip dance end with suicide, but it's really something to see. Quite dramatic.
Yeah.
Roxanne quits, but then she's told she must go on. So the edge of love happens. She pours champagne on herself. This is one of those scenes where you're like, that's Pia or Roxanne? Like, what is it? Really blurs the moment there. Backstage, Ray tells the girls they got to go topless. They say, have some junkies go bottomless.
One of our dancers forgot to take off her top.
They weren't clapping or nothing. I did a flip, no hands, and they didn't even notice. I'm not going to take my top off unless they deserve it.
You paid her admission. You're buying drinks, which takes care of your salary. Now, I want you to go out there and give them what they came here for.
Fuck that, Ray. Why don't you just hire a bunch of 18-year-old junkies to go bottomless and wiggle their tonsils in the customers' faces?
The only junkie I know is sitting right in front of me.
Oh, I'm hurt, Ray.
Well,
I'll do my job.
thank you.
I grew up in Oregon where dancers just completely disrobed everything. So I didn't know about, like you were talking about California. And in here, later on, they say you have to be 5 feet away if you're topless. And I was like, I didn't know that rule either.
I don't know about California, but I know that in Seattle, that used to be a rule. I think things are changing now, but yeah, in what I've had dancers tell me is that I think, and I could be wrong because I've never been to a Seattle strip club, that even in private dances that you have to be 5 feet away. I know during the pandemic in Portland, it was that you had to be masked and 6 feet away. So it was just like, okay.
We'll take everything off but that.
Okie dokie. But it's interesting, and I know different states have different laws, and so yeah, that 5 feet away if you're topless is fairly common in some states. So yeah.
Okay. Next, the cops are in a Jeep, and the dude has a sword through his earlobe. It rules. This is Greg Evigan from My Two Dads. It's such a cool, weird earring that I mean, we both have survived through the big primal body piercing thing that happened in the 90s, and I didn't see anyone with a sword through their ear, so this was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So the cops go get donuts and discuss Cody going undercover as a dancer. He also fake stabs her with a knife, which is something that comes back time and time again in this movie, which is very weird. I don't quite get it. Next, the cops get some paperwork, and Cody decides to go undercover. This scene is where we meet Diana Bellamy as Cheryl. She was in Critters 3, Ghost of Mississippi, Diabolic, Malice, Outbreak, a ton of stuff. I love her in this movie. Cheryl is like one of my favorite characters. She's so dry. And then later on when she does her makeup, I'm just like, I don't know. She's fantastic. She says in this scene that her sister has a whorehouse, but she won't tell her where.
Oh, yes. Yes. Oh, God.
Pardon me if I'm interrupting what I'm sure is a very important deductive brainstorming session, but I have been granted the privilege of bringing you your messages. Here's an interesting one. Motor pool. Can't find top. You're stuck with car.
Whoa.
They anticipated just such a reaction.
It's so good. And she also says, beware the ones that go for your feet, is her advice that she gives her.
Size 6, right?
My sister said always beware the ones that go for the feet.
I know. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, Cheryl is awesome. Next is Amateur Night, which is something that does happen in strip clubs. I've heard about this. We see one number, and then Cody comes out in a gown, but she's not really dancing. Run Through the Night is the song. Her moves are really stiff, and she can't get her dress off, so she just rips it off, and everyone loves this.
Mm.
This was really hard for the actor to do because she actually was really good at dancing, and she would do like West Coast swing, I guess. So when she had to act like she couldn't dance, and then her feedback from fans would be like, you were really bad at dancing in that scene. And she's like, yeah, I was supposed to be bad at dancing. I'm a really good dancer. It's just funny. So
Yeah, I wondered about that because later on, it's like all of a
Yeah.
sudden she could dance.
She's
I
got
was like,
moves.
hold on a second.
You recognize it because you're
Yeah.
like, wait a second.
Yeah.
She takes off her top, and then a guy gives her his jacket. And then they bring everyone out. Cody's now Sunny for the rest of the film. She wins. She gets 3 $100 bills. And then backstage, she encounters the dancers mourning their best friend. So things move pretty quickly through the film.
Good morning, miss. Your friend is dead. Which one of you sluts did it? A friend of ours was killed last night. I liked your act.
My timing was great.
I never knew anyone who died before.
Everyone I know died, not me. Stick around, you'll probably get the job.
And then the next number is Cinnamon in a fur coat with arm-length gloves and a sexy man voice singing Money Makes the World Go Round.
Money make the world go round. Can't pay the rent without those presidents. Hamilton, Jackson, and Grant. But if you make the grade, the clouds all go away. And the day gets sunny. Money make the world go round.
Next, Cinnamon, played by Carly Byron, was an accountant. She's actually not one of the performers that was discovered. This was an accountant that was cast in the film.
Oh.
Yeah, and so
Okay.
she was giving great tax advice and stuff, I guess, backstage, and then come
Perfect.
out and do these performances. But she discovered she really loved it through the performance in this film, and I loved that kind of moments of discovery for people that, because you think dance is one thing, but then you do it and you're like, oh my gosh, I love this. I love how this makes me feel. I love maybe the empowerment of it. And that actually happened to someone in the filming of this movie. So I think that's
I
a
love
fantastic
that.
thing.
That's
Yeah.
great.
So I wrote down this might be the most burlesque number of all because they have a fan.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the most classic burlesque number where the glove peel, the fans, that is just like where everything else is definitely can fall under the umbrella burlesque. That is like, if you're talking about classic burlesque, that would be it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's funny too because people think of like say stripping in one thing, but not burlesque. To a point that, like, when I was a kid watching older cartoons from previous generations, in Looney Tunes, Bugs Bunny does burlesque. Like, there's whole sequences with the bubbles and stuff where they're leaving a big. And so I knew what burlesque was as a child. Like, and
Totally. I mean, and Bugs Bunny did drag too.
Yeah, yes. Yep.
It's amazing when I hear that, like, drag's a new thing or like transgender's a new thing. I'm like, did you ever watch Looney Tunes?
Yeah, seriously. Oh my gosh. At one point, Cinnamon falls off stage. So let's talk about accidents and mishaps. I don't want to hear, about someone being injured, but like things have to go wrong in these situations. I mean, stage size is different maybe from rehearsals to performance. I mean, there's got to be.
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've slipped on stage, slipped on a costume piece, hit my head, and then just had to pretend that everything was fine as like everything's spinning.
Oh.
Yeah, it happens, and you just have to kind of roll with it. And more often than not, the audience is right there with you.
Sure.
They want you to succeed. And even when you seemingly fail, people will be so encouraging. So like,
I honestly don't think I've been in a more supportive feeling crowd than at Black Lodge. Like the
yeah.
amount of cheering and genuine like excitement for each performer when they come out, and not just the bow but like the whole thing. Like I was just like I wouldn't even known to tell people that this was going to happen, and I was kind of moved by the amount of support and love coming from the audience. Just like
Yeah.
yes, like I don't know, I can't imagine what it's like to feel that from a stage perspective, but like it felt great in the audience.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then next, Cinnamon tells a joke. What's the difference between sushi and a girl? And it's rice. It's a very weird joke.
What's the difference between a girl and sushi? Race! Get it?
I'm not even sure that's a joke. But then Roxanne comes back and Ray fires Cinnamon because she's on pills, and that's why she fell, he says. Backstage, there's a character that's dressed as a Native American and has nunchucks, and probably the most confusing two elements to be combined in the film. Debbie breaks down who Pocket is.
The last night before Angel was killed, Pocket was back here. He did something to her. She wouldn't talk about it, but she was afraid.
Come on. He's been here longer than I have.
Who's Pocket? He's just some weirdo who jacks off through a hole in his pocket. No big deal. He doesn't get it on the floor or anything.
And then Ray offers Sonny a job. And next, Mademoiselle Fanny, Tracy Crowder, performs kind of a more jazzercise-inspired, red-lit number with impressive gymnastic floor work. She was discovered in, Kat says, a real dive, like a real, not where she found some of the other ladies. And she was doing these sort of moves, and she's like, you've got to be in this movie. And it's one of those, it's one of the performances where the athleticism is just crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, that act. And I loved how she was like, where's my rug? And just like waited until the DJ brought out her rug. I was like, absolutely, ma'am. Good work. It's like, I'm not putting my bare ass on that stage. I was like, good for you.
Yeah, yep. But then right before that, she like kisses the pole and then puts her leg like vertically against the pole and then kisses her knee. It's like, oh wow, there's a lot happening. It is. And like in this film, there's like a little bit of plot and then a number, a little bit of plot and then a number, and it's paced so well that I get why like Roger Corman's like, yes, lots of breasts, perfect. But like from an audience standpoint, you get a full story and all these performances. It's really you get everything you could possibly want from a movie called Strip to Kill.
Yeah.
All the performances in the film are really creative and inspired, but where do you find yourself pulling inspiration from?
Oh gosh, it depends. Sometimes it's a song, sometimes it's an idea, sometimes it's a costume that I just want to make. Sometimes it's a show that I'm booked in. Like, for instance, we keep going back to Black Lodge, but yeah, when the first time that Baby asked me to host, I was like, well, I can't just like go out and host. I have to be a character. So who's the most prolific character in my mind? Well, it's Dale Cooper.
Right. Yes.
So, Dale Cooper can totally carry the Lynchian universe. So that's how that inspired me, just getting booked for a theme show. I mean, another one is I was booked recently. There was a musical artist coming to town, and I was, for lack of better terms, assigned a song of theirs, one of their newer songs. And I was like, okay. And I just listened to the music. And then finally I was like, it kind of reminds me of a snake. I'm like, okay, well, I'll create a snake act, which is perfect because it's Year of the Snake. So now I have this act that I can then this year really shop around and be like, oh, I have a snake zodiac act. I can do this. It depends. And yeah, sometimes I'm, sometimes I'm just in a mood and I'm like, how come no one's ever done? I mean, I have an Aqua Teen Hunger Force act. And I think I was watching Aqua Teen and I thought, how come no one has done a Master Shake act to Milkshake brings all the boys to the yard? And then I looked it up and I don't think anyone had. So then I now have an Aqua Teen act where I come out as Master Shake and strip into Carl.
Hey, guys! What are you doing in my house without my permission?
We're here to take your pornography and sodomize our vast imaginations.
So give us the damn magazines!
Oh, I'll give you a magazine there, buddy. Hey, it's full of hollow points. You're gonna love it when I put those in a gun and then put them in your brain.
Don't try to stop us, fat man.
We are in control, Carl. There's nothing you can do.
You are powerless.
We have the foreigner belt.
Wait a second, is that from the 83 tour? Yeah, I saw those guys in the Meadowlands with Bryan Adams. That was a kick-ass show.
Wow, that is very specifically somebody's kink. You know it is. That's, that's you created something that someone was going to have an awakening where they're like, oh my gosh, yeah, that's me.
What's funny is that was one of the first burlesque acts that I did when I moved to Portland. Mm-hmm. And so I met a lot of people as Carl.
That's hilarious.
And then when I would meet them out of Carl, they would have no idea who I was. And I'd have to be like, oh, right, I'm Carl. And they're like,
Carl.
Oh, shit.
Mind your tongue, Professor Nerdhead.
Oh, it's so good. Sunny checks out Mr. Pocket, and he gives her a paper flower and says, nothing real is worth shit. I was like, wow, okay. Then a guy with a car sells Pocket something. It's a cassette. And we learn that Pocket's great with a butterfly knife, which I'm not sure why that was a part of the film, but he is. And then we see Cinnamon limping home, which is sad. Suddenly we get a wire around her neck as she's pulled up off the ground and then attached to a semi-truck and drugged to her death. This was all done by the director. She didn't think anyone would do it right, and so she's actually the person with the wire and the person dragging the feet. We just see the feet. But she wanted to move fast, and she thought, no one's going to move faster than me. And so the director, she actually does the murder scene here, which is interesting. Sunny comes home and hears something. She kicks in the door. Heinemann is sitting on her toilet. They talk about breasts flopping around.
I must have been breast blind. I think if I would have seen one more tit, I would have thrown up.
I thought men like watching tits flop around.
I don't like to see yours flopping around.
They don't flop.
Yeah, I noticed that.
And then the next day they talk about self-hypnosis and assault. Interestingly, the self-hypnosis tape is Roger Corman's voice. Heinemann then says he's going to bribe the coroner with a leather daddy magazine, which is, I think, a very nice touch.
Yes.
That's another thing I really like about this movie is that we've talked about not villainifying Pia's character, but also they talk about a lot of specific things that people are into, call it kinks, call it what you will, but none of it is judged. It's just sort of brought out into the open, which I think is such a cool thing, especially in the 80s, to have in a movie where normally the guy into the leather daddy stuff, he's the killer. Or, it's like,
right.
Yeah. He's just like, oh, he jokes. He already had that issue with a magazine. That's the whole joke, is that the guy just already had it. Like, it's just,
yeah.
I don't know. There's just parts in this film that I was like, I love that all these people can just be people. And it's not even a plot point. So, okay, favorite performance. I'm guessing, I'm not sure if you have one, but the spider web with Brandy is definitely one of the ones that I think artistically, visually, with the black light and the white web, it's just the arm sticking out of it. Do you have a favorite performance that you have done over time, or one that you often wish that you could bring back out? Or
oh, wow. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to make any of my acts feel bad.
Right. I know. It's a terrible question, but I just thought I had to ask it because sometimes there's something that even if you just got to do it once, you're like, well, that one was pretty great. I don't know if I'd ever bring it back, but
I feel like my 3, which funny enough are all comedy acts, that I did a lot for a while. One being the Aqua Teen act.
Hey, Carl. So maybe you'll be a good person to ask who wrote The Moon Rules, #1 on my car with a key.
Whoa,
if you have a problem with that, maybe you should take it up with Mr. Laser.
Yeah, Mr. Laser.
Here it comes.
Here it comes.
You will be destroyed.
You're going down.
The explosion will be of extraordinary magnitude. Just hang on.
It takes a while.
Nice shot there, Brickout. Now I want you jokers out of this. Oh, God, my back!
Hey, what happened to Carl?
Oh, Oh boy, this is what I've always wanted.
Silence, nerd!
Prepare for a moon spanking.
Now you drop those sweatpants right now!
I do an act as a derpy space babe where like I come out and I move super slow in this like a space helmet and this like ridiculous spacesuit. For a whole song, I just move like I'm in space.
Nice.
And then all of a sudden I realize that I can breathe. And in this foreign environment, and then I take off my clothes because that's what you do in Space Babe. And
Yeah.
I have a keytar.
Nice.
Because when I first made the act, I was inspired by the band Space from the 70s,
Yeah.
where they played guitars.
Yeah.
So I, as Space Babe, needed to have a guitar. So just randomly, I get thrown a guitar halfway through the act and rock out on a guitar. And so, and it's just ridiculous and fun. It was one of my like favorite acts to do at Kit Kat because people were like, "What are you? Oh, okay, this is fun."
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I do a Bret Michaels tribute act, which if people are into Poison, I kind of go through his whole career where, you know, we start with Every Rose. It's not linear.
Sure.
Start with Every Rose. We go through a little bit of Rock of Love, and then you know, some things happen where he falls from grace, but
Yeah.
then like we go back to young Bret Michaels, the Look What the Cat Dragged In era, and redeems himself.
I mean, I'm sure that's how he'd rather it went too.
You know? Right?
That's a gift. That's a gift for Brett. Next in the film, Derek, the DJ, hits on Brandy again backstage, and she finds a cigarette butt in her coffee cup. One of the many details that on your first time watching it, you don't see. And on the rewatch, you're like, oh my gosh, like the level of the script writing that went into this and the details it's very impressive for this type of film. And then Brandy says, I've never seen anyone jerk off a snake before.
Very sensitive, Brandy.
I've never seen anybody jack off a snake before.
She's stressed. I'm giving her a massage.
The next number is Vaguely Asian by Roxanne, but she stops dancing to accuse Pocket of murder. Then the girls surround him in an alley and knock him down, but Sonny stops them. And then Sonny learns that Roxanne and Angel were in a relationship. It's a plot point, but it's not something that, like, it's just so interesting. I keep coming back to it, that a film, Stripped to Kill, handles these subject matters in the 80s that, like, the 90s struggled with, you know? They'd be like,
totally.
Oh, she's a lesbian, she's the murderer. It's just, in this, they're just like, they were two people in love, and the brother was jealous his sister was going to leave, and that's what triggered all of this. It's not an abusive relationship that's, like, you know, sexual or something. It's just so fascinating to me.
Well, and even though Eric was jealous or worried that Roxanne was going to leave him, there was a reason behind that too.
Yeah.
It wasn't just that he was a weirdo stalker brother. It was that they had a really rough childhood and they were really bonded, and he didn't know what to do without her.
Yeah.
And so, and that was like, again, so kind of deep for a movie like this in the 80s.
Yeah.
It's like, no one was really the villain. Everybody was like, and not even really disenfranchised either.
Right.
There, like, no one was painted in a bad light. It was like you could not necessarily relate, but understand where the characters are coming from.
No, I'm so glad you said that, because even though they mention like Cinnamon's having a drug issue, but it's not like they're all on drugs and that's how they ended up stripping, you know?
Yeah.
Like, all of these things in less agile hands could be really off-putting and, you know, detrimental towards people working in these professions and stuff. But instead it's just like, no, like there's just this rich history to these characters. They all feel really lived in because of how the casting process went. Yeah, it's so unique.
Yeah.
Cody and Henneman chat again at the donut stand, which is weird to keep going there. He's got his play knife still. And then back in the club, we get Sonny in white lingerie on a zebra print couch shaped like lips. And I was like, this is the 80s. This is...
Yes, totally.
This is what I remember. If we don't have a couch shaped like a stiletto, lips will work too.
Yes.
She gets within 5 feet of a guest, and this is where Ray says you can't get that close to them if you're topless. I don't know how to describe the next number. It's a saxophone song, and the performer is in white with tiny cowboy boots. It's just brief.
Yeah.
But then Vanity returns back from the Philippines and Guam in a red and black vamp outfit. It's this one, I was like, this seems super 80s as well. And then Heineman breaks into Roxanne's place to find a door with a padlock. He picks it and then finds something tied up It's the sculpture from the beginning. Suddenly we see a shotgun, and it's the upstairs neighbor. He used to be a cop. It's Jay Bartell is the actor. He was also in the sequel as well as Dance of the Damned, so he liked working with this director. And then the brother Eric listens in, and the next day Heineman goes to see Sunny, and she has the only tabletop oven I've ever seen. I don't understand what's going on in this kitchen, but the oven is on top of the counter. It's
that was weird.
So weird. They receive a call that the cops found out about their undercover move and that Sunny was out there topless.
Hello? No, she stepped out for a minute. Take a message. It's your partner, Sergeant Heineman. Yes, sir. No. No, actually, no, I did say that it was a homicide. I did say it was a strip club. I didn't realize that the regulation was that specific. If there was any kind of miscommunication, I'm sorry, sir. No, it's understood. She's out of there. Thank you, sir. Bye. Well, you can hang up your G-string. Rumor got to the brass that you've been dancing topless.
And we learn that Heineman has tricked her the entire time. It's an interesting character because he starts out kind of sweet and then he kind of gets grosser as the movie progresses.
Totally.
Oh, it's weird. Brandy is telling Ray that she needs to leave to go to the gynecologist, and Sunny shows up to Ray and she says, "I'm resigning." And he says, "You've got to dance one last night," which is like perfect because those cops always have one last job.
Ray, I gotta leave a few hours early. I've got a gynecologist appointment. It's the only time he can fit me in.
No way.
But Ray, I got this kind of yeasty thing. They think it might be contagious.
I don't want to hear it. Just go. Go.
Hey, Sonny. Hey.
What now?
I'm resigning. I was just getting used to it.
Is this your 2-week notice?
It's more like my 2-minute notice.
Randy was just leaving.
Hey.
I was depending on you.
Look away.
You know, when I hired you, I took a chance. You said that you were reliable. You said you wouldn't screw me over, you remember?
Look, this is a little bit more complicated than I think you understand.
Did you lie to me? If you walk out now, you lied to me. I trusted you.
So Sunny asks Brandy why she does it, the money, the power. This is what we were talking about earlier. There's many reasons why people perform.
Yeah.
Do you personally find it gives you something that you don't get from, say, teaching or coaching? Is there something?
Yeah, I mean, I love being on stage. And it doesn't matter how I'm feeling or what's going on. Like once I get on stage, like I just drop into whatever I'm doing. On one hand, I wonder if it's because I've done it for so long that I'm able to get there. I mean, I love teaching too, and I love helping people unlock their performing potential, but being on stage, there's just I just love it. I love it. Like I've had people ask like why I do it, and I'm just like, because I can't not.
Yeah.
When I have times where I don't perform, I get real anxious and
you need that
antsy,
outlet.
and I yeah, it's just in my bones, in my soul. I gotta dance.
Yeah. I get it as I always have to have something creative that I'm working on, and if I don't have that kind of outlet, I get real depressed. It's just like a sadness. I don't know. But then just simply doing something like this, recording an episode or guesting on something, or anything that scratches that creative itch. It's just like I imagine it's what people get from exercising, but
yeah, totally.
but I don't get that. So then Sunny does a number with an elaborate office set and blinds. This is a fantastic piece. I love how they work the blinds. Heineman is pissed that she's back. He's having his 97th shot of whiskey. He says Cinnamon was found dragged 100 miles under the semi, and she's got to get out of there. Heineman thinks it's Pocket, and then Cody and Heineman kiss in a part of the film that I really don't enjoy. And then we get piano music and sex on the floor by the Waits. I didn't want Cody to hook up with this guy at this point. I was just like, he's gross. I don't know. He tricked her, and even if she's going to come out of it with this awakening of strength that she can, harness, at what cost? Heineman looks for Pocket and finds a man eating a Klondike bar in an alley. I enjoyed that detail. He then goes to the guy who sold Pocket the cassette, and then Sonny goes to see Cheryl, and we get a backstory on Margolin, the blackmailing of prostitutes, which I was just like, oh, okay.
Don't suppose you have a year, case number, officer's name? Didn't think so. That's B-A-Y-E-R. Which reminds me, I have a splitting headache.
Thanks, Cheryl. With Margolin vouching for him, I feel a little silly even asking.
Margolin?
Yeah, the ex-cop who alibied them.
Well, that's who I think it is. He's a story and a half.
What do you mean? Cheryl, what about Margolin?
I can't get dip on this screen. Is the girl pretty?
Who?
Roxanne Headache.
Very.
17 years ago, Margolin was retired for blackmailing juvenile prostitutes into having sex with him to avoid arrest. Had a real problem with little girls.
Would he lie for sex?
That's what I said.
And then Heineman goes to a nighttime classical concert in this park that has night buskers, and now they have a classical concert. What's going on in this park? It's wild. He finds Pocket, and Pocket is missing a hand. And I was like, okay, so I guess it's not Pocket. So Sonny goes to Roxanne's house and meets the brother. She notices the same padlocked door and looks inside, and it's the body of the neighbor now. And then Roxanne attacks. Only it's not Roxanne, it's the brother Eric. This is the big reveal. And then there's a struggle. She's stabbed in the heart, only it stabbed the fake breast. And then we learn that Roxanne's not dead. She is Eric. So then Eric shoots the couch a bunch of times and pours gas on her. And then Sonny escapes. It sounds like a lot, people, but trust me, it all makes sense. And then there's this chase scene through that same park where there's fire involved. The stairs catch on fire, and it's gorgeous but wild. Yeah. And then she eventually ends up back at the Rock Bottom Club, and she yells, "Shoot me! I'll cut your fucking mouth off!" And she throws the fake knife, which causes Eric to panic and pull the trigger, and since he's covered in gas, he goes up in flames. Heineman shows up at the end. Unfortunately, he's still alive. That's the end of the film. It rolls credits. What a crazy climactic ending.
Yeah. I haven't seen the sequel. Does it pick up where it left off, or?
I've never watched the sequel either.
Okay.
Yeah, I have Dance of the Damned. I picked that up recently because I realized I didn't have the rest of this director's films, but I've never sought the sequel. I knew it existed, but I kind of was weary of it because I think this movie is so perfect that...
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of, it wraps it all up.
It wraps it all up. I know Maria Ford is in the sequel, so I probably should check it out, but I haven't up until this point. But do you have any final thoughts?
I mean, I love it. I loved finding out about the creation of it. Mm-hmm. The performances by the dancers are just epic, and I wish that we had more of that. There is a feature performer circuit where a lot of times it's it's porn stars doing acts, but sometimes you have burlesque dancers on the feature circuit. I know that a couple of people from Portland are on the feature circuit, and so there are bigger clubs in the US that do performances like this, but kind of only features.
Yeah.
And Kit Kat here in Portland does do that, and they have different theme nights, and on the weekends they have bigger shows. But, it just seemed like this club in the movie was always doing these epic acts.
Yeah.
And, I would love to live in that fantasy, even though it's kind of unsustainable to have these like crazy sets every show.
For every number. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's where burlesque comes in, and you can, depending, it's still like when you're trying to run a show on time, you can't have a crazy elaborate setup for every act, but you can like create it other ways through movement and costuming. So this movie's got everything.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the final questions I have are just questions for yourself. And the first one being, do you have any inspiration for somebody who maybe has heard of burlesque but is interested in it as a subject matter, possibly performing? What advice would you have for someone like that?
Oh, go to shows.
There you go.
Go to different shows. Seek out burlesque in your town. There probably is at least one show, if not somewhere close to you, there is. And talk to the performers, talk to the producer. If you are inspired after you see a show to get involved, we always need help as far as like maybe stage kittening or tip collecting or ticket taking. And just that's kind of a ground floor way of getting in, getting to know people, just watching how shows are run and how acts are not necessarily created. You don't get to see the creation when it's on stage, but seeing what you find speaks to you, basically, and then go from there. And then, start following creators on Instagram too and YouTube and finding out like what speaks to you the most.
Perfect. What is the best way for people to follow you and find out things that you're a part of?
Probably right now, Instagram. I'm trying to be more active. I'm not very good at social media, but I'm doing better. So yeah, either Instagram, Natasha Riot, and you can follow the show Burly Nomicon, spelled just like it sounds. I don't really keep up on my website very much, but through Instagram, you can find out how. I think I have links to some Google Drive docs that have my class descriptions and my bio and whatever. So, yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your time. Thank you for revisiting Strip to Kill.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
Excellent. As always, I'm Dirk Marshall, and this has been VHS, where when it comes to celebrating rad films and even radder friends, we're not done yet.
The words you're looking for are thank and you.